Hey, Book Dragons, I am so glad that you joined me today. I have a book review, and I know it's been a while since I've done a book review, but reading slumps happen, and I just haven't been finishing a lot of books. But today, I have a book that I recently finished that I am so excited to talk with you about, and that is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is the first book in the Thursday Murder Club series, and it did recently get a TV adaptation on Netflix as well. So I'm going to do a dual review today. We're going to talk about the book, and then we're going to talk about the movie, and I am going to have timestamps in the description below so that you can hit different sections of this video that you find interesting. And let's go ahead and talk about this marvelous little book. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to think initially. I first heard about this book from Jessica over at Jessica's Library Card, and it just sounded so wonderful and so charming, and I was just determined I was going to read it. Since then, I have heard a few negative reviews, but overwhelmingly, I have found that there are more positives than negatives on BookTube about this series. And I love a good mystery. And when I found out the premise of this book, that it was about older folks living in an upscale retirement community, solving crimes together, I was sold. I just absolutely had to at least give it a shot. And I've had it on my list for a while, and I finally got to it because I was determined that I wanted to see the movie. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to get the book from my library. And it took a long time to get it from the library, guys. I'm just saying there was a long wait, probably because everybody wanted to read it before they watched the movie, like me. So that's a long way to get to my point that this was right up my alley. So, as I mentioned, this follows 4 older folks living in a retirement community, and they have formed what they call the Thursday Murder Club. The original intent behind the club was to dig through old cold cases to see if they could turn up any new leads and maybe help the police out with closing out some of these older cases. And so there are 4 members of the group, and these are just some amazing characters, guys. I just want to say right off the bat, I have a deep respect for older folks and the lives that they led, the histories that they have experienced, all the things that we can learn from them that a lot of people tend to ignore. These are folks that often get pushed by the wayside, but they have so much to teach us. And so I find older folks endearing. I really do. And, one of these days, I'm going to be one myself. We all are. And, I would hope that people will, listen to me in my older years too, We've all had experiences, and as we get into our older years, at that point, we've learned a lot about what to do in life and what not to do, right? So I just kind of came at it from that perspective, and I really dived deep into these characters, and Richard Osman really allows you to do that. So I'm going to get back around to it. The characters here, the 4 main characters are Elizabeth, Ron, Joyce, and Ibrahim. And they all come from different backgrounds. It does take place in the UK, and it takes place at a retirement village called Cooper's Chase. And they have not known each other really in life until they got to Cooper's Chase, but they eventually just kind of found each other and started this club to solve murders. And when we get into the story that the club already exists, we're not hearing about the founding of it. I don't know if we'll find out more about that in later books, but as of right now, you're just kind of thrown into it. You start the book and they're looking for a possible new member for the Thursday Murder Club because one of the members, named Penny, has recently had to go into hospice care because her mind and her health has just severely deteriorated. So you start out the book knowing that all that has taken place, and they're looking for someone else to join their little club. And so as the book progresses, you're following these 4 wonderful characters, enlightening characters, I would say, as they look through old cold cases. And some of these cold cases may or may not be important as the book progresses toward the end. And that's all I'm going to say, because I want you to read to the end and find out what happens. The way that this book is constructed is it's following 2 different storylines. Yes, there is a storyline about murders and digging into old murders, trying to solve them. And that storyline also includes new murders that happen at some point in the story. And they decide, hey, maybe we can help solve these murders too. So there's that storyline. But there's also a slice of life storyline that follows our 4 main characters as they experience what it is like to grow old and to be somewhat detached from their families and to feel the aches and pains of growing older and to see what can potentially happen to them just on the horizon if they were to go downhill like their friend Penny. There are so many aspects of their lives as older folks and trying to experience the joys of life, knowing that the reality could be quite a bit different within a decade or maybe even less. So there's always that possibility looming around the corner for them. And just to see the way that they interact with each other and the way they dig their minds into different things and the ways that they try to keep their minds active and alert and not let their minds deteriorate, things of that nature. You're just getting to experience all of those things along with them. And there are moments of sadness and there are moments of great humor. Like there were several times throughout this book that I was just laughing out loud at some of their antics and some of the things they said. And the characters are just so charming. Ron is a firecracker. He's one of my favorite characters, but it's hard to really pick a favorite among them. He's an absolute firecracker. Ibrahim is just such a astute and well-dressed, presentable gentleman, and really has a mind like a whip for certain things that are happening around their neighborhood and with the murders. And then you've got Elizabeth, who has a very mysterious past that we don't necessarily find out much about, and maybe we will in later books. But there's definitely more than meets the eye to Elizabeth. And then there's Joyce, who is kind of... She comes off somewhat ditzy, but she is anything but. She uses that persona, if you will, to her advantage. And it's just so comical to watch because of the 4 characters, the only first-person perspective we get in the book is from Joyce, because you've got the storyline of the old folks home in the retirement community and what's going on in their lives. You've got the storyline of the murders, and those are all in the third-person perspective, so the author is telling you their story. But then you've got diary entries from Joyce, and those are all in the first person. And I died laughing so hard because, I mean, you go on all these rabbit trails with Joyce, and you're thinking, okay, this is leading somewhere, right? And eventually it leads somewhere. But she is just a joy to read about, to read her thoughts. And so, yeah, I absolutely adored the characters in this book. They were so good. And there were times where I was like, okay, where is all this going? And then you all of a sudden get twists that happen in the story. And the owner of the retirement community, named Ian Bentham, is also a major character in the story. And he's got his own agendas with furthering his monetary empire. So all of these things are at play. And there are times that you do wonder, okay, where is this going? But as the story progresses, it just throws twists at you left and right, and there's things that you don't expect to happen, and when they happen, you're just like, wow, I did not see that coming. And the ending, guys, the ending was so very good. Such a satisfying ending. There are other characters in the book as well, such as Bogdan, and I really enjoyed Bogdan's perspective, and there's other side characters as well that I won't tell you about, but they do play a fairly major role in the story. So I highly recommend getting engaged with this book if you are a character-driven reader, because you are going to get so much character work in this story. And I've kind of bounced around telling you about characters and little bits about the plot here and there. So I'm going to kind of cut to the chase and talk about things that I liked and things that didn't totally work for me. For the most part, everything about this book was satisfying for me. I absolutely loved and adored the characters. Even the side characters were really well written, and you learned a lot about them. And I thought the plot was really amazing, and the story was really unique, just in general. For a mystery novel, it's not very often that you follow a group of older people solving mysteries, and nobody really gives them the time of day because they're older folks and you don't think they're up to anything, but then they're up to something behind the scenes and you never know what to expect. I just loved that twist on... I just loved that subversion of the typical mystery story. Thought that was great. So the plot was really good. The writing was really clear and precise, and fairly well paced as well. It's a shorter book, under 400 pages, so it's an easy, quick read, and I just really ate it up. I was having such a great time by the end of it that I just couldn't put it down. The last day I read it, I read 100 pages because I just had to finish the book. I could have taken longer, but I had to finish it. So, excellent storyline. The mystery and the resolution to the mystery was resolved to great satisfaction for me. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed so many aspects of the book. There were a couple of things that didn't work for me. The first one is that the storyline did take a while to pick up and get where it was going. I wasn't quite sure if we were going to eventually get to the point of the book, because it did feel like it meandered a little bit. But as I progressed in the storyline, I realized that there was a reason why it meandered. And I think it all fits really well. So even though that was a bit of a low point for me, I feel like I understand the reasoning behind it as I got to the end of the book. The other thing that didn't totally work for me was that there were several times in the book where there would be phrases that I'm assuming are British slang phrases that I didn't totally understand what it was talking about. And I kind of searched around in the context of the section I was reading, and for the most part, I eventually found out what those things were referring to. There were a couple of times I did look it up to find out what it was, but because this is a British writer and it's set in the UK and everything, the characters are going to say a few phrases that may not be understood by people in the United States, for instance, and we kind of have to figure out what those are. For instance, there was one where somebody was talking about grassing someone, and I wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but then later on in the story, I figured out, because of a certain context, that grassing someone refers to ratting someone out, spilling the beans on them, so to speak. So I eventually found that out in the context of a later part of the book. But when I first saw that pop up in the book, I'm like, what in the world does that mean? So, yeah, it will eventually make itself clear with a couple of exceptions. So that's not anything that is a deterrent for me for these books, honestly. I love learning new stuff, and I love British slang. There are so many phrases from British slang that I use in my everyday speech just out of habit. I don't know, like I pick things up in a book and then I just happen to use them in my day-to-day speech, and somebody will say, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, sorry, I picked that up from a book, or I heard that somewhere and it's a British slang. So that's not necessarily a deterrent, but it did kind of take me out of the story at times. It was just a learning experience for me, and that was great. So I absolutely loved this book. I give it a big heart. It was such a great story, and I will definitely be continuing the series. So let's move on now and talk about the movie adaptation on Netflix. I liked the movie overall. It was fun. Let's talk about the casting to start off with. I thought the casting was absolutely fantastic for the most part. There were a couple of characters that I was like, oh, I don't know about that casting. But the four main characters that were cast in the movie were spectacular. Joyce was played by Celia Imrie. Helen Mirren played Elizabeth. Ron was played by Pierce Brosnan, and Ibrahim was played by Sir Ben Kingsley, and all of them did a smashing job. They perfectly embodied the characters from the book, and some of the little quirky nuances of each character was really well played out, and I just absolutely loved it. Ben Kingsley always looked immaculate, just dressed to a T, which the character in the book, Ibrahim, is the exact same way. We kind of talked about that earlier. So I thought they did a really good job of portraying the characters. There were some great surprises, too. Like, Ian Vintham was played by David Tennant. And I had no idea that David Tennant was in this movie. And that just chalked it up even more for me, because I love David Tennant. He's one of my favorite actors. So yeah, he played Ian Vintham, and then I was also surprised to see that Elizabeth's husband, Stephen, was played by Jonathan Pryce. And it was a first for me seeing Jonathan Pryce in kind of a protagonist role, because normally he plays villains, and he plays them really well. Or villainous type characters anyway. So that was really neat. I thought he did a really good job playing Stephen. And there were a few others that were really great as well. I just really enjoyed the cast overall. The actor that they got to play Bogdan, I didn't really buy. And I also really did not like what they did with Bogdan's character in the movie. His character takes a totally different direction. In the book, it feels like he's going to have a major role to play in future books. I just don't get the same feeling in the movie. I mean, maybe he will be there in future movies as well. I just didn't really like the direction that they took his character. So maybe that will change in future movies if he's in those as well. And then there were a couple of other characters that were changed quite dramatically. I realized that they had to trim it down because they were making a movie and it was under 2 hours. I get that they had to leave things out and change a few things to adapt the story, but I don't know. I mean, there were characters from the book that I felt like were pretty important that were just kind of left out, and I don't know. I enjoyed it overall. I would give it. I don't know if I'd give it a full thumbs up. It was just okay for me. And maybe if I had given myself space between reading the book and watching the movie, I would have enjoyed it a bit more. But coming off so fresh from the book, I literally watched the movie the night after I finished the book. I finished it during the afternoon that day, and then that night I watched the movie, and I was kind of disappointed, to be honest. They got the spirit of the story right, I think. And I think Richard Osman may have been involved with the adaptation as well. So that's cool. And if he was okay with the directions they took some of the things, that's fine. But I didn't really like some of the ways that they did things. The ending was mostly intact. It was changed slightly, but it was mostly there. So I'm excited, and I hope they do future movies. I really do, because I'm going to read the rest of the books, and I'm going to want to see some adaptations. I am looking forward to seeing what they do with the movie franchise as well. That's all I have to say on this amazing story. I really, really enjoyed it. I highly recommend reading the book. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Have you read this book? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts on it? Have you been on the fence and you want to read it more now that you've heard my review? Let me know in the comments below as well. Same with the movie. I'd love to know what you think and what your thoughts are there. If you are commenting about the book or the movie, please leave it spoiler free. I will have a spoiler comment down below and I'll pin it so that you can make spoiler comments there if you want to. But we want to keep it spoiler safe for everybody watching the video. And that's all I've got to say. If you want to watch more of my content, there's some ideas here in the end screen. And until next time, make sure you read more books. I'll talk with you soon.